Hello there, welcome back. We continue with object-oriented testing in week 10. Last lecture I introduced you to the new set of problems that occur because of the presence of class inheritance dynamic binding that result in different versions of the polymorphic methods executing dynamically. Yo-yo graph is a useful model of a call graph that is used to visualize all possible calls that can be made to different polymorphic methods that are owned by different classes. It's just for visualization. After that, you could use it to do your normal coverage criteria that you do on the graphs and apply whatever you need to do it. In this lecture, exclusively, we are going to focus on understanding more kinds of faults and anomalies that come in object-oriented applications. We saw one data flow anomaly in the last lecture because some other polymorphic method, some other version of the polymorphic method was executing dynamically. So what could be the various kinds of faults or anomalies that can happen because of the presence of these features? It's just a cataloging or a listing of them, and we'll see some of them in this lecture today. So the problem is in object-oriented programs, how complex it can get is basically focused on the connections that exist in the components. Connections could be in terms of class inheritance, in terms of methods overriding each other, in terms of the access levels of the methods and the variables owned by each class. A lot of these things cannot be determined statically. By looking at an inheritance diagram and knowing the polymorphic method, as that example illustrated, I don't know whether B's version of a method M is going to run or C's version of the method M is going to run statically by looking at the code. When code executes, it's only at that point at runtime I'll know which method runs. And because certain other method runs, there could be faults that manifest out. The problem with inheritance and polymorphism, we saw how yo-yo graph visualized it. We saw examples about what happens there. They can go down vertically, bounce back up, and these are dynamic because an object can bind itself to instance of any class. In addition, there are aggregation relationships, use relationships, and so on. And it's very difficult for a designer who's using all these object-oriented features to get a full visibility into data and the methods that use the data. Because of this, several different faults can come. And there is a cataloging of these kinds of faults available. Just by understanding and studying the kinds of faults that are available, we can appreciate how difficult it is to test these object-oriented programs. So we'll present some faults related to inheritance, polymorphism, constructors, and the visibility of data. We'll explain some of them in detail. We'll just list some of them. And we assume that in all these cases, we are considering object-oriented programs. There is a class inheritance, there is dynamic binding, there is polymorphic methods. And the fault or the anomaly, we use these terms synonymously. An anomaly can be manifested as a fault or can just be left out as an anomaly without causing any visible mistake at the level of output, but we may not distinguish too much. We assume that the list that we're going to see is going to deal mostly with faults that relate to polymorphism, and specifically in the context that uses an instance of an ancestor. That is, instances of descendant classes can be substituted. Descendant or child classes can be substituted for instances of an ancestor. Whatever faults that we are going to see are specific to object-oriented programming languages and are not dependent on a specific object-oriented programming language. Nothing specific to Java, nothing specific to C++. It's not like that. At a generic level, we're just going to look at a catalog of object-oriented faults that come in the presence of class inheritance, dynamic binding, and polymorphic methods, and use of constructors. So here is a full list of faults that that are known to commonly occur in object-oriented programming for these features. Each fault has a name and an abbreviation, as we did for mutation operators, you need not worry about remembering the abbreviations. They're just meant for convenient use. But you should get familiarity by understanding the name of the fault and intuitively getting an idea of what it is. So there are about 9 of them listed here in the table. There are more faults and anomalies that are known for object-oriented features. I can give references where all these things are listed. There are some of them that I've colored green. 4 of them are colored green. Out of these 9, we're going to discuss in detail these 4, and I'll leave the rest with just a mention of their name. I won't be discussing all of them because we're just seeing these faults and anomalies just to get an understanding of what they are and how they can occur. We are not going to see algorithms that are guaranteed to detect each of these faults, but it's just for an understanding of what these typical faults are. So 4 of them we'll see in detail. The remaining 5, we will just leave it with the listing. First one, inconsistent type use fault, ITU. Here, a descendant class does not override any inherited method. So there is no polymorphic behavior. So because of this, there could be issues. Because of the lack of polymorphic behavior, when it was intended to behave in a polymorphic way, there could be lack of issues. Class C extends class T. This is an example. And C, let's say, adds new methods because C is going to extend class T. Let's say we take an object O. Object is first used as C, then it's used as T, the parent class, and then again as a C. The problem is the methods in C can take the object to a certain state. Then the methods in the parent class T are going to run, and they might take the object to another state. And then the methods back in C are going to run again. The problem is the switching of context from C to T back to C. This can cause problems because the methods that belong to T can put the object in a particular state, in a particular condition that will become inconsistent for the methods that will be running at the second time the object is used as a C. So we'll see an example. Let's look at this picture. There are 2 classes. There's a parent class called vector. There's a child class called stack. Vector has a data that it manipulates called array. And class vector provides 2 methods. One method for insert element at a particular position. One method for removing element at a particular position. I have not given the arguments to the method. They don't matter for now. Just the names of the method. It's a sequential data structure that supports direct access to its element. That's what is class vector. It has these 2 methods. Then there is a child class, class stack, that basically inherits the methods from class vector to implement its own method. So like all other stack data structures, it has a push method, it has a pop method. Pop picks the top of the element of the stack and removes it. Push pushes the element that you give into the top of the stack. So these are inherited from the respective methods in the vector. Pop is inherited from remove element at, push is inherited from insert element at in the parent class vector. Now look at the code snippet on the right hand side. It's just a fragment of code. Let's see what the issue is related to the inconsistent type use fault that we are currently discussing. So in this code snippet, there are 3 pushes that happen. So push is this method that is owned by the stack. So it pushes string 1 followed by string 2 followed by string 3. Now the stack, assume it was empty to start with. Now it has these 3 elements, string 1 followed by string 2 followed by string 3. Then a call to this method called dum is made. Let's go to the code of dum. Dum actually uses the vector v class. And then it says v remove element at v of size -1. So what is happening here? The second element in this stack got removed by this method dum after it finishes running. Now let's go to line number 4 in this code. So that's a pop. So how many elements are left in the stack now? There were 3 that were pushed. The method dum removed the second element from that. So 2 more elements are remaining. So the first pop will work, second pop will work. The third pop will have nothing to remove, because this call to dump used this method remove at element from the vector class, and that already removed the middle element. So the third pop, after which the stack is supposed to be empty, as this comment says, will not work. And the stack is already empty after the second pop. So this kind of inconsistency is common and results in an inconsistent type use fault. So this is the case of, there are two classes, class C extends class D, stack extends vector. C adds new methods. We had that push and pop. First you use something as a stack. That's what we did here. Push, push, push. Then you use something as a T because it called the method dump, which used the remove at element from the class vector. Then again you use something as a C. So in this code, you again go back and use pop and pop from the class stack. So what will happen? The overriding methods in X will fail to define some variable. The methods in T can put an object in a state that is inconsistent for C. So that's exactly what has happened here. By the time the third pop comes, there's nothing to pop. So it's inconsistent as far as the stack class operations are concerned. So this is a fault that can happen because of this issue. The descendant class does not override an inherited method, so there is no polymorphic behavior. Next kind of fault is called state definition anomaly, SDA. Here, the state interactions of a descendant are not consistent with that of the parent or the ancestor. The methods that refine in the parent's method or the ancestor method in the descendant fail to define some variables, so the required definitions may not be available at all. So let's, as an example, say a class X extends classes W and X also overrides some of the methods of W. It can so happen that the overriding methods in X fail to define some variables that the original methods in W had defined. So an example here. So look at this class inheritance hierarchy on the left hand side. So there is class W, there is X, there is Y. W has variables U and V. Class capital X has variable X. Y has variable W. And W also has methods M and N. X has method N. Y has method M. Right? Let's assume that in some code, as indicated on the text on the right hand side here, the method M of W defines the variable V, and method N of W uses the variable V. And the method N of X also uses V, but the method M of Y does not define V. So this is very similar to the problem that we have been discussing. Let's say we have an object that's of actual type Y. Then what will happen? The method M of Y is going to run, and for a variable V, method M of Y is not defined it. So later, when the method N of W or when the method N of X runs, it's going to use V, but it has not been defined at all. So this is an example of state definition being an anomaly, being an issue. The next kind of error is state definition. There, state definition did not exist. Here, state definition exists, but it's not consistent. So it's state definition inconsistency anomaly kind of fault. So here, what will happen? Let's say a local variable is introduced to a particular definition of a class, and the name of the variable is the same as an inherited variable V. Now what will happen? That the inherited variable, let's say, is hidden from the scope of the descendant. I don't use the super keyword. So I don't qualify it. Then what will happen? A reference to V will refer to the descendant's V. A state definition anomaly can exist if a method that normally defines the inherited V is overridden in a descendant, and the inherited state variable is hidden by that local definition. So here we'll see another example. The same kind of picture, W, X and Y, as we had for the earlier example. W has variables V and U, methods M and N. X has variable small x, method N. Y has V, method M. Now, Y overrides W's version of V. The variable V of y overrides the variable v of w. That's this arrow back here. The method m of y defines v's y. Now, the method n of x continues to use v, but whose version of v is it going to get? It's going to get w's version of v. So if an object is of actual type A, then the definition that exists of v is going to be that of y, and x, the method n of x, is going to end up getting an inconsistent version of v because it's going to get w's version of v. So here the value of v, which is a part of the state, is defined, but it can be inconsistent. So this is another kind of anomaly. Then the next one in our list is state visibility anomaly, SVA. Here is another example. Consider a class W, which is an ancestor of x and y. X extends W and y extends x. This kind of picture that you see on the left. W declares a private variable v, and W also has a method, let's say m, that defines the variable v. The descendant class y overrides m and calls W's m to define v. This can cause a data flow anomaly because the variable v, if it was private to W, which it is, then there's a problem because W cannot access it. Y cannot access it properly. So this is the visual depiction of the same thing. There's W, x and y. W has a variable v and a method m. W's m actually defines v. Y's m cannot call W's m and happen to use v. So because the variable v is not visible to the method m in y. So this is an anomaly related to state visibility. There are other kinds of faults. In the original table that I showed you, there were 9 of them. And we saw only 4 of them in detail through examples. Other kinds of faults relate to state being defined incorrectly, where an overriding method defines the same variable that constitutes a part of the state that the overridden method also defines. And if they have different code, don't compute the same thing, then this could result in a state being defined incorrectly. Then the next is state can be defined, but it becomes an inconsistent definition when a descendant class adds an extended method that defines an inherited state variable. So like this, let me just go back by a few slides. This table had 9 of the faults or anomalies. A few more are available. We saw 4 of them, the green colored one in details through example. There's also incorrect state definition and a few faults related to use of constructors, which we didn't look at. Those are the 3 that we didn't look at. But I hope the ones that we looked at will give you an idea of what are the different kinds of faults that can occur just because we have class inheritance and overriding methods and different access levels of variables. These are typical object-oriented programming features, and these useful object-oriented features are also a rich source of various kinds of errors. What we did in this lecture was to give you an idea of the kinds of errors that can come. In the next lecture, we'll continue with object-oriented testing. We will look at how to capture coupling variables in the presence of these call interfaces, coupling variables in the presence of call interfaces as depicted by a yo-yo graph, and what would be coverage criteria that we would define specific to object-oriented call interfaces. So I'll stop here for now. Thank you.